Good morning, everyone. Happy Friday. Woo! All right, here we are, 9 o'clock, Friday morning in the lovely city of San Francisco. How are we all doing today? How was yesterday? Those tours, we want to thank the city of San Francisco again for their amazing organization around those. So thank you so much. Woo! So here we are, our last sort of big session for the Public Art Pre-Conference, which I'm really excited about. We had 3 fabulous jurors this year who looked through our Public Art Network Year in Review. For those who don't know, the Public Art Network Year in Review has been going on for about 16, 17, somewhere around those years. And what we do is we ask people to submit applications of projects that were completed the previous calendar year. They are then reviewed by at least 3 professionals in the field, and they select up to 50 to present to all of you to highlight some of the really fantastic work that's going on out there. So we just like to recognize the amazing work that's been going on and some of the unique things and trends that we're sort of seeing sort of unfold the past year. And so you'll be hearing from them shortly, but before they come up, I am going to read their bio so you know who's going to be talking. We have the lovely Allison Sarr, who was born in Los Angeles, California. She studied art and art history at Scripps College and received an MFA from the Otis Art Institute. She received the United States Artist Fellowship in 2012 and has also been awarded the John Simon Guggenheim Memorial Foundation Fellowship and 2 National Endowment Fellowships. Allison has exhibited in many galleries and museums, including the Hirshhorn Museum and Sculpture Garden and the Whitney Museum of American Art. Her art was represented in the collection of the Whitney Museum of American Art, the Baltimore Art Museum, the Martin Museum of Art, and the Metropolitan Museum of Art. We also have Sherri Bergman, who has been managing art programs and public art projects in New Mexico for 20 plus years. Sherri holds a master's from UNM's School of Public Art Administration with an emphasis in cultural policy evaluation. Sherri was a founding member of the Americans for the Arts Public Art Network, and served on the PAN Council from 2000 to 2002. She's a former printmaker, gallery manager, special events coordinator, winery owner, and has been adjunct faculty at the University of New Mexico's Arts Management Program from 2008 to 2016. In her spare time, I don't know where she has it, but in her spare time, she founded and manages the Intergalactic Cultural Relations Institute, a nonprofit organization dedicated to exploring the role of art and culture in future interplanetary diplomatic relations. So, thank you. And we're going to be joined by a third juror. His name is Kevin B Chen. He has been involved in the Bay Area arts community for over 2 decades as a curator, writer, a visual artist. He currently serves as co-chair for the City of Oakland's Public Art Advisory Committee, a member of Recology's Artists in Residence Program Advisory Board, and Root Division and Pro Arts Galleries curatorial committees. Manages the Artist Residency Program and public art programs at the DeYoung Museum, and is visiting faculty at Stanford University. He has curated projects for the Headland Center for the Arts, University of Nevada, Reno, and more. He was the program director of Visual Arts Intersection for the Arts for over 15 years, where he curated over 70 exhibitions and hundreds of public programs. So, before I invite them to the stage, I'm going to throw some facts at you. For this year, we received over 320 project applications that were then reviewed by these fabulous jurors. They selected 49, which they're going to talk about this morning. We received submissions from 36 states, plus DC, and 4 countries total. Over 400 artists were represented throughout those applications, and the total project budgets, this is crazy, that represents all those projects was over $71 million. It's a crazy amount of money. So you guys are doing amazing work out there. I just want to kind of throw out, this is what we're seeing. And so without further ado, I'm going to invite the 2 jurors that are here, and we know that one's coming because he's stuck on public transportation. He's going to be here soon. So.
Good morning, everyone. Okay, I think Alice and I are feeling very confident in Kevin because he's been absolutely on top of everything through this whole process. But I think we're missing him right now, even though I've never met him. So we're excited for him to get here. Let me make sure this works. Go in the right direction. Okay. So I'm just going to, I'm Sherri Bergman. I'm just going to give a little kind of overview, a couple of comments that we wanted to share with everyone about our process and what we went through. I'd never met my other two colleague jurors, and we actually did a lot of talking on the phone, lots of conference calls as we were reviewing these artworks, all 325 of them. And we had an initial phone conversation to sort of set some parameters and ideas very generally about what we were interested in looking at. And we kind of came up with the idea of looking at process, how the work was created, who was involved, practice, whether it was more of a traditional public art practice or some sort of multidisciplinary sort of approach. And we looked at the implications of the art once it was completed or the project once it was done, if it was temporary. So sort of looking at the outcomes. And those were very broad and very subjective for each of us. We intentionally looked at diversity of all types, whether it was geographic, permanent, short-term, long-term, gender, you name it. We really tried to look very closely at all of that to make sure we had good representation. After we did one round of yes, no, maybe, which hopefully you all use that process a little bit. It works very well. We narrowed it down to the top 70, and then we started noticing some sort of natural themes that started to evolve from that, and so we did lots of communication, and we narrowed it down to really 15% of everything that was submitted, which is pretty amazing to try to be critical in some way to get down to that small number. We basically after the fact came up with about 6 themes, and so each of us are taking 2 of those themes. We'll talk a little bit about those from our perspective. So we didn't have any of these categories when we started, and it just sort of came organically. The 3 of us had an amazingly cohesive sense of our top choices right off the bat. And we were able to continue narrowing it down. And I'm sharing all of this with you because most of you who are arts administrators who manage public art projects, you know how this goes when you have your committees and lots of artwork to review. And so it was just very interesting for me as administrator kind of being on the other side, seeing that the process works the same way when you're looking at projects that are completed. My personal wish is that I wish all of you could or had to do this. It's an amazing experience, and it's one of my personal philosophies is that you should always put yourself in the position of being a judge whenever you can, and it's very rewarding and fulfilling. I also want to say for all of us arts administrators who are constantly harping at artists about getting their proposal in correctly, using great photography, well, guess what? That applies for the field of administrators too. So unfortunately, we had to disqualify 3 because they were not filled in. The applications were not filled in properly, but that was pretty minimal. So with that, good morning, Kevin.
Hi.
Nice to meet you. Okay, so my 2 categories, or the 2 categories that I'm presenting on, are dazzling and humor. And the dazzling category was really just sort of the public art wow factor. Everything from just aesthetically to the production, everything you can imagine. So it only seemed fitting that we would do a big shout out to the San Francisco Arts Commission for all the work that they have done putting into the Priscilla Chan and Mark Zuckerberg General Hospital. This is a Cliff Garden piece, 8 figures of metal and light in the main entryway roundabout. Unfortunately, I haven't gotten there to see it yet, but I hope to do that this afternoon. But it just was a beautiful piece that seemed to be very, very fitting for the site. And we're not going to go through, we're not going to hit like every single detail because we know that you all get the chance to acquire all the detailed information through the year in review website. Okay, so just a few more pictures of it lit up at night. And the the way the daylight and the nighttime light works on the surface of these beautiful sculptures. Okay, next, there's a series of architecturally integrated glass installations in the General Hospital, and there was several of them that were submitted. We kind of wish we could have bundled them and just kind of done a big shout out to all the artists who did all of these, but we went through and scored them and picked out some that kind of rose above the others. But the fact that this format was replicated over and over and over in this building just seemed to make for a beautiful public art statement about really fully integrating art and architecture. Okay, next, of course, we want to say congratulations to New York. And as Lester mentioned yesterday, this is sort of a once-in-a-career, once-in-a-lifetime opportunity for artists and arts administrators. $4 million project with 4 new subway stations in New York's Upper East Side. And again, this has received lots of press, lots of notoriety, just amazing work. All of this micro mosaic imagery, ceramic, porcelain, and glass tiles. And I think that kind of the wow factor for this, one little piece of trivial information here, is that this project is probably the public art project that's been in the planning process longer than anything else. It started in 1929. Okay, shout out to Philadelphia. This is the median of South Broad Street in Philadelphia. It's a 14-block temporary installation of vinyl, and it includes words and imagery by their poet laureate. And I just want to commend whoever photographed this. This is definitely an example of excellent photography that conveys the artwork if you weren't able to be there in person to see it. Okay, next we have a couple of convention centers, big wow factors. I mean, how can you not do great public art and big convention centers with great budgets? So the first one is the San Antonio Convention Center. It is Christian Moeller. And this installation all around the upper level of the top of the convention center consists of 100,000 white vinyl dots attached to a special chain link draping around the top surface of the building in the form of cactus, which is just a nice abstract symbol representing the environment, but also has this kind of cosmic look to it. Okay, another convention center. This is the Orange County Convention Center in Orlando, Florida. And this is a 2-story tall installation of this sort of amoeba form, 3-dimensional amoeba form, which I love. It mismatches elements from biology, achieving familiar, mysterious quality at once friendly and alien. It's made from strips of aluminum, no thicker than a credit card. Again, thinking about process and installation. Okay, Seattle, great little project, the Seattle Presents Gallery. This is a mural, a digital collage vinyl wrap mural by Zenobia Bailey, incorporating a lot of really amazing bright imagery, symbolism. The title, which you can read across the top because it'd probably take most of my time to read the title, is really great. But again, the visual impact from this sort of view and perspective of being able to have just an entire indoor mural that consumes an entire space. Okay, and this is the Los Angeles Rancho de Amigos Rehab Center, and this is the work done by the De La Torre brothers. I'm a big fan of the De La Torres, and this installation piece combining a lot of interesting technology, from what I understand, like lenticular printing embedded behind glass with other elements fused right into it. The photography on this, obviously proving very, very difficult with so much reflection, but it's clearly something that a lot of people enjoy taking photographs of too. Okay, Houston, Texas. We actually select 2 projects at the Discovery Green Conservancy. This is the 12-acre park in Houston that has been developed and maintained for Houstonians. And these 2 light projects, one is a LED light canopy with a sound component to it, and flower shapes, and it changes, programmable. And then this one is the Enchanted Promenade, which also is another light installation. Both of these are permanent. And I think that was one of the factors for me that was kind of interesting, that an entity would make a commitment like this with this much technology to really keep it up for a permanent amount of time. Okay, next we kind of transition from Dazzling to humor. And I want to say that this was the year of the cloud. There were about 5 to 6 public art projects that were submitted that had to do with the theme of clouds. So that was a very interesting little kind of sub-theme that came across. It was very interesting. So this is in El Paso, Texas. It's the 1966 roundabout. That's the street number, or the spur number of the highway. And it's a very, very large installation. You can see it's basically 3 sides in the middle of a roundabout with the theme of a cloud that is reflected and comes across both day and night with the flickering metal pieces capturing the environment and the wind and just the color of the sky. Really beautiful. I'm from the Southwest. I'm kind of particular to our large open skies. Okay, this is Martin Purrier, colossal, whimsical installation at Madison Square Park. This is the 33rd installation in the series that they've done there, and the size of it is just amazing. And what I found particularly interesting about this, which was not part of the actual application, but knowing that it had been deconstructed and now reinstalled in Philadelphia, I think it's pretty amazing that something this size is actually travelable. Okay, Scottsdale Public Art. This is called Looms, and it's a series of floating elements that are very light and sort of ethereal looking, made out of different colored fishing poles. 100 different fishing poles with LED lights and kind of spaced throughout the canal. Temporary, lit up at night. Okay, in Boston, this is called SOS, which is the Safety Orange Swimmers. And there are 22 floating foam figures just kind of hanging out in the water, doing their thing. And it's just the idea of sort of having this small herd of orange figures floating down a river. Just sometimes public art, just make you giggle. I'm sure there's a much deeper meaning to some of this, but it's very fun. Okay, this is in Cleveland at the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame, and located throughout the downtown area and various places, through bringing tourists and visitors through more of the area in downtown. And what it does is a very large style, sort of iconic looking speakers that actually play music by that year's particular inductees into the Hall of Fame. So it brings awareness to music and showcasing the musicians while also serving as an actual public artwork. Okay, and this one just kind of completely speaks for itself. We love this one, all of this. It's a great little art intervention. I wish we could show you the video of this, but basically kind of taking these funny little houses and literally rolling them into the middle of the street just to kind of get the photograph or leave them there as long as they possibly can to harness the steam that's coming from underneath the streets in New York. And it just sort of repurposes the whole idea of this very important infrastructure and brings a sense of whimsy to it. Okay, another cloud. This is Cloud House, and this is Matthew Mazzata. Matthew, are you still here? Maybe he's still here. This is a fun little project, very whimsical, just in its shape and its form, almost like a child's toy. And we know that it has a lot of really rich meaning about harnessing rain and growing and sustainability and food production. But it was just a very fun, sort of, just from a visual perspective, fun and humorous. Here's a little more information about the actual function of the cloud and the water system within the structure itself that collects water up into the cloud and makes it rain literally into the walls of the building, into the windows where plants then grow. Just, sometimes we all walk around with our own cloud over our head. It just sort of, seems like that. Okay, so this is the last one in the humor category, and we chose this specifically to transition into the next category that Kevin's going to do, but this is called Metronomes. And these are sculptures installed at the San Diego airport nearby the major roadway where traffic runs through, and they actually move. They kind of look like they're bobbing a little bit, but what they are doing is they're actually in sync with the traffic flow of the area. Amazing technology. I can't even begin to understand how it works, but the fact that they bob and move and kind of sway related to the flow of traffic makes very fun and whimsical, but also brings attention to sort of the activity of the space. So there you go, Kevin.
Okay. Forward and backwards. Good morning, everybody. All right, moving on to a category that we found a lot of projects in common. Technology in its broadest sense. Oh, that's a good idea.
Oh, yeah. Why didn't you do that? Yeah, it's hard to see. Hard to see over the table.
Okay, so we've got Swim, Storm, Glide, permanent project in Boulder, Colorado. Lead artist Eric Carlson and Area C Projects. Commissioning agency Colorado Creative Industries, and art administrator, the public art program manager Ruth Bruno. This is a 8-foot diameter projection disc installed in the Jenny Smalley Carruthers Biotechnology Building at UC Boulder campus. The imagery is comprised of hundreds of animated artificial life units that were based on research materials from the biotech lab that it's housed in. 3 discs that measure approximately 30 feet tall, and they're projected on both sides. I'm going to run through 4 projects really quick and then go into depth into 6 other projects. This is 1.8 London, a temporary project in London. Artist Janet Eckelman and the commissioning agency Artichoke Creative Company. These are braided and knotted fiber and light projection installed in Oxford Circus. For those of you who know, Oxford Circus is one of the busiest pedestrian areas in London. It was a focal point for Lumiere London, a light festival produced by Artichoke Creative Company. So at daytime, you couldn't really see the light projection, but at night, that's when the projection happened, and the public was invited to use their smartphones to download colors and tap patterns with the touch of a finger to animate and activate the piece. The dimensions for this too, the net is 100 feet long, 45 feet wide, and 25 feet deep. This is Solarize, A Sea of Color, a temporary project based out of Chicago. Lead artists Petra Bachmeyer and Sean Galero. Commissioning agency, Chicago Park District, and the art administrator, the Garfield Park Conservatory Alliance, Director of Conservatories, Mary Eisenbach. So 5 immersive installations in the Garfield Park Conservatory, located in historic Garfield Park in Chicago's west side. Electronics, LEDs, lights, mixed media, plant material, and sound. Right here in our backyard, this is Tabula, a permanent art piece in Palo Alto. Lead artists Charles Gattikin and D.V. Rogers. Commissioning agency Brick LLP, and art administrator for the City of Palo Alto Public Art Program, the Public Art Program Director Elise DiMarzo. So what you're seeing here is a light panel installation on Visa building. It's a new 3-story mixed-use building. Over 2 stories of a subterranean parking garage in Palo Alto, 63 RGB light panels measuring 14 feet tall, with a total length that measures around the building of 160 feet, displaying information drawn from live seismic data feed that's public with the U.S. Geological Survey. Okay, going to go a little bit more in depth into 6 other projects that we felt like technology was a nice thread through all of these. So this is Immaterial. It's a permanent art project in Atlanta, Georgia. Lead artist Tristan Al-Haddad and Formations Studios. Commissioning agency Fulton County Arts and Culture in Atlanta. And the art administrator for the public art program, Lisa Tuttle. So what you're seeing is a 16-foot by 8-foot horizontal wall installation located between the children's reading room and the community meeting room inside Southeast Atlanta Library. It's about 15,000 square foot space. The piece symbolically represents the library's evolving role in the complex global network of knowledge, communication, and collaboration in the global age, transforming from a house of knowledge into a web of thought. So the installation is an immersive threshold into digital knowledge space, a world of infinitely connected rays of light comprised of 144 unique literary quotes. The lines here map the locations of each library in the Atlanta Fulton Public Library System. There are 32 branches in the library system there. And the outline of the fitted acrylic panels represents the neighborhood served by each library in the system. What's really kind of cool about this, so it's assembled of 4 layers of acrylic material, each with very specific, unique visual properties. The base layer is an opaque mirror. And I'm trying to wrap my head around this because I haven't seen this in person, but imagine what I'm talking about. So there's four layers here. The base layer is an opaque mirror. The second is a light-emitting radiant layer of vibrant green. The third is a clear depth layer. I'm not sure what that means. And the fourth is a 2-way mirror. So combined, these basically create this kind of infinite space. Pretty cool. This is Mesa Musical Shadows, a permanent installation in Mesa, Arizona. Lead artist Tous les Jours. Commissioning agency and art administrator, the director for the Mesa Art Center, Cindy Ornstein. So it's an interactive pavement that reacts to shadows of passersby by playing sounds of singing voices created by Daily Tous les Jours, an interaction design studio with a focus on collaborative experiences based in Montreal. The piece was created for the Mesa Art Center. For those who have not been there, it's a huge performing and visual arts complex in downtown Mesa, Arizona. It's about 200,000 square feet. It was completed in 2005. It is the largest comprehensive arts campus in Arizona. It encompasses 4 performance venues, 5 art galleries with about a total of 6,000 square feet of exhibition space, 14 different classrooms for music and art. So this piece was installed on the north side of the campus in front of a newly opened rail stop and measures approximately 800 square feet in size. So what you're seeing here, these are custom tiles embedded in the pavement that activate the audio when shadows are actually cast over them. And Arizona is known as one of the sunniest states in the country, and so they have lots of shadows year-round, not unlike here in the Bay Area. So as visitors explore different soundscapes with their shadows, they become part of a collective sound and body performance. So yeah, again, shadows trigger different tiles, which each trigger their own sounds. The length of the shadow obviously is dependent on winter or summer. And the sounds are different during different times of day as well. So, for example, sounds triggered in the morning are peaceful and ethereal, sustained choral tones that follow your long shadow. So in mid-noon, when the sun is directly overhead, shadows are shorter, sounds are chopped and frenetic, creating like a rhythmic, energetic soundtrack. And then nearing sunset, the shadows become long again, and clusters of contemporary melodies are triggered. And dark, when it's nighttime, they're just like ambient sounds of nature as we understand it. Pretty cool stuff. This is Energy Flow, a temporary installation in Pittsburgh. Lead artist Andrea Poli. Commissioning agency was the Pittsburgh Bicentennial Commission. And the art administrator was the Pittsburgh Arts Council Office of Public Art Director Renee Pachoki. So in 2016, Pittsburgh celebrated its bicentennial. This was a national call for artists to create an installation piece for the Rachel Carson Bridge. It was one of the, for those of you who have not been to Pittsburgh, it's one of the iconic 3 yellow bridges that crosses the Allegheny River. They're all named after Pittsburgh icons. The other 2, Roberto Clemente Bridge and the Andy Warhol Bridge. And this is also known as the 9th Street Bridge in downtown Pittsburgh. This connects downtown Pittsburgh, the core, to the North Shore District. And the length of this bridge is about 900 feet. So Andrea Poli partnered with a Pittsburgh-based company, Wind Stacks Wind Power Systems, a full-service wind energy design and manufacturing company, to create, let me float to here, to create 16 vertical axis wind turbines with microgrid power systems responsible for storing the wind energy and managing it and basically illuminating the LED installation here. So there's 27,000 multicolored LED lights that outline the bridge, and it's a real-time, we don't have the video for it, but it's a real-time visualization of the wind speed and direction as captured by a wind station. Whoops. Captured by, got it. Hi, Patricia. Captured by a wind weather station located on the bridge. So as well, if the backup system, if there's not enough energy stored, or if there's not enough wind, it's actually powered by electricity. And just a fact, Rachel Carson, for those of us who probably know her, Silent Spring, she was born just up the river, the Allegheny River, from here. This is Conversation, a permanent art installation in Palo Alto City Hall. Lead artist Susan Narduli, and commissioning agency and art administrator, City of Palo Alto, public art program director there, Elise DeMarzo. So what you're seeing here is a 20 feet long by 5 foot installation. Palo Alto also put out a call for artwork for the lobby of City Hall to represent and encourage an open and transparent style of governance. Site-specific new media work, Conversation, relies on public participation and is a media arts representation of democracy unfolding in real time right there in City Hall. So the custom interface scans and posts social media and local, national, and international news feeds and allows users to use this interface to respond with comments and upload photos responding to those, to the daily news feed. Whoops, sorry about that. So this is Unbound. It's a permanent art project in Chapel Hill, North Carolina. Lead artists Eric Carson and Erica Carpenter. Commissioning agency was the Chapel Hill Percent for Art program. And the administrator, Chapel Hill Parks and Recs Department's Public and Cultural Arts Administrator, Jeffrey York. So what we are seeing here, Unbound, it moves across and beyond boundaries of public and private, while examining the library as a place that simultaneously binds information, collecting, curating, and archiving and keeping it safe, and unbinds it by releasing it to the larger community. This is cited at the Chapel Hill Public Library, and the Library of Ephemera, which basically populates all of these screens, photos, letters, recipes, ads, schoolwork, homework, much more, was sourced from the community's personal archives, and it basically comprises over 10,000 media clips submitted by Chapel Hill citizens. The artwork uses custom software and algorithms to display ever-changing combinations of media while drawing viewers to explore the Braille-based matrix. Let me back up here. Of glowing text. So all the glowing lenses with the media is Braille. As well, so some of the details there you can see on the steel. There are other coded systems there, such as Morse code, shorthand, and binary code. And this measures about 6 feet tall and 26 feet wide. You can see all these other coded systems embedded there. So this is the last project that we felt was best cited into the technology umbrella, but in a funny way, this is anti-technology, but based in the heart of technology, right here in Palo Alto. It's another project based in Palo Alto. This is called the Running Wall. It's a temporary project right in front of Palo Alto City Hall, which we just showed you the interactive display piece that was based in the lobby there. Lead artist Aaron Lee Benson, commissioning agency and art administrator, again, the City of Palo Alto Public Arts Program, and their public art coordinator, director, Elise DeMarzo. So the Running Wall, this is a temporary site-specific sculpture in King Plaza in downtown Palo Alto, right across from City Hall. It's constructed basically of 2x4s, hundreds of them. So Aaron Lee Benson basically, well, the City of Palo Alto put out a call. Aaron Lee Benson responded to some of the public art master plan, which the community of Palo Alto commented that they wanted a desire for more functional art and more site-specific work. So Benson basically created this running wall of 2x4s, and it measures 5 feet tall by 90 feet long. You can see that there's spots to lean against. Benches to sit on. So the fun thing about this project too, so it was a temporary site-specific installation in downtown Palo Alto. Part of this project, what to do with all this lumber after this temporary installation happens. They basically donated all of this lumber to Stanford University, and specifically the Department of Art Practice there. For those of us who are here in the Bay Area, we're very familiar with this artist. His name is Mark Sasaki. He's had a lot of installations in Patricia's Green and Hayes Valley. A lot of times these very organic forms of natural branches and such. It's been up in Patricia's Green over the past couple of years. So this was basically, these are shots of the work in progress that Mark did for his MFA thesis exhibition that is currently still up at Stanford. So he basically, with a bunch of friends, went down to downtown Palo Alto and just basically hauled all this lumber over to the campus of Stanford. And he created this massive sculptural installation, which is on view now. And this is, the structure is basically based on an internment barrack at Tule Lake, based on Mark's father's own experience of being interned during World War II. Okay, so the fourth out of these 6 categories that we found really nice pockets to place all of these amazing, diverse projects into, we would kind of categorize as voice and story and language. I'm going to talk about 2 very quickly and then go into depth into 3 more. This is 47 Stories, a temporary project in Philadelphia. Lead artists Shira Walensky and Laura Deutsch, commissioning agency Mural Arts Philadelphia, and the arts administrator, project manager for Mural Arts Philadelphia, Jess Lewis Turner. So this is, again, a temporary installation on the external surfaces and inside the bus. This is a specific line. It's the SEPTA 47 line in Philadelphia, which runs north and south, connecting very, very diverse communities in Philadelphia. And basically, images on the bus and inside the bus are places that are important to members of Philadelphia who live and work along Route 47. And the quotations reveal what the interviewees of that community, again, running north and south, love and value about Philly. And we don't have the sound for it, but also see that QR code. So they also basically surveyed citizens to create a playlist that they felt appropriate that ran along Route 47. I really do not know. I'm not even going to try to pronounce the title for this. So this is a permanent installation in Edmonton, Alberta, Canada. Lead artist Destiny Swiderski, commissioning agency Edmonton Arts Council, and the arts administrator Edmonton Arts Council Public Art Director Catherine Carr. This is a wayfinding project in Michael Fair Park in Edmonton. They are led by a flock of Bohemian waxwing birds. It's about 150 copper silhouettes capturing the birds in all stages of flight, and are decorated with storytelling patterns created in community workshops facilitated by Destiny. Knowledge holders and elders supported the artist throughout the project. This measures 27 feet tall by 63 feet wide. Love looms over Buckeye. This is a temporary project in Cleveland. Lead artists Damian Ware and Alan Giberson, commissioning agency, many commissioning agencies, Land Studio, the National Endowment for the Arts, the Buckeye Shaker Square Development Corporation, and St. Luke's Foundation. This is a literary art project based in Cleveland's Buckeye neighborhood, combining poetry and hand-painted signage to convey a message of love, hope, and inspiration. The project paired local spoken word artist Damian Ware, who's on the left there, and visual art firm Little Jacket and sign painting artist Alan Giberson, who's on the right there, to create a series of hand-painted looms along the Buckeye Road Commercial District between East 118th and East 119th Street in the Buckeye neighborhood of Cleveland. For those of you who don't know what a loon is a very specific American poetic form modeled after the haiku. Same 3-line poem, but it's a syllable count of 13. So instead of 575, it's 535. The syllabic structure of the loon forms a crescent moon, and 13 syllable count symbolizes and represents the 13 lunar months in a year. So if you can see, keep your head to the sky, for the sun will always shine. So there's a bunch of these loons scattered throughout this one block. Let me help you with your heavy burden and baggage. Am I missing a syllable there? But you get it. So 5-3-5 structure there. So in early 2015, Damien conducted a series of poetry workshops with John Adams High School students in order to gather community-inspired stories and imagery in the form of loon poetry. The theme of Damien's work most recently has focused on 5 key aspects of love in modern society, as explored in Bell Hooks' 2000 book titled All About Love, New Visions. Bell Hooks, who many of us know, is a major cultural critic and theorist. Her stuff, five of these aspects of love: commitment, caring, communication, respect, and responsibility. So this was the workshops that Damien led with these high school students. One of the other things, you'll see this graphic symbol to the right of the text. So each one of the loons here is accompanied by an Andinkra symbol. It's a tradition of the Ashanti people of West Africa. Andinkra symbols are visual representations that encapsulate evocative messages that convey traditional wisdom, aspects of life and the environment, and social values. There's 800 different symbols and variations. Can't really dig in there, but there's a bunch scattered throughout here. So love loons over Buckeye. They had a great video too, but we don't have it with us today. So this is the Memphis Murals, the Memphis Upstanders Mural Project. It's a permanent installation in Memphis, Tennessee. Lead artists Cedar Nordby and Nelson Gutierrez. Commissioning agency, the Urban Art Commission and Facing History and Culture. And the art administrator was the executive director for Urban Art Commission, Lauren Kennedy. So this is just some information about these agencies. The Urban Art Commission is a nonprofit established in '97 that works with various partners to commission artists of all media to create public art in Memphis, Tennessee. Facing History and Ourselves is a nonprofit international education and professional development organization with 10 locations, including one here in the Bay Area, London, New York, LA, and also Memphis. Their mission is to encourage students of diverse backgrounds in an examination of racism, prejudice, and anti-Semitism to promote the development of a more humane and informed society. So the Memphis office of Facing History and Ourselves serves more than 545 schools in the Memphis, Chattanooga, and Louisville area. So these artists are Memphis-based artists, Cedar Nordby and Nelson Gutierrez. They created this mural, which measures about 70 by 30 feet, and it's meant to honor community-nominated upstanders, extraordinary Memphians who embraced the challenge to speak out, stand up for others, and make decisions that created a more inclusive, just, and compassionate Memphis, and by extension, American culture and society. So they photographed local citizens in Memphis and compiled their portraits into a mosaic. So if you can see the grid behind the larger portraits, that is the collected grid portraits of local Memphis citizens. And the large portraits are 14 upstanders who are historically really important figures in the Memphis community and history. Some of the 14 include African-American journalist, early civil rights activist, and founding member of the NAACP, Ida B. Wells, prominent civil rights activists, especially during the civil rights movement, Maxine and Vasco Smith, and minister of St. John's United Methodist Church, Reverend Frank McRae. So the mural here is painted on the east wall of the Facing History and Culture Ourselves office, and it's located right across the street from the National Civil Rights Museum at the Lorraine Motel. For those of us who know, the Lorraine Motel is the site where the Reverend Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. was assassinated. So this is an amazing site because this mural basically it's seen by hundreds of thousands of visitors to the museum. A shot during the Women's March post inauguration. Okay, the last one in voice and story and language, which is this project is a nice feed into Ellison's. This is called Public Trust, a temporary art project based in Greater Boston. Lead artist Paul Ramirez-Jones, commissioning agency Now and There, and the art administrator, the executive director for Now and There, Kate Gilbert. Now and There is a nonprofit organization dedicated to creating impactful public artworks in Greater Boston. Their projects are both temporary and permanent, thus the name Now and There. And Now and There, historically, it's a reinvigoration of the Urban Arts Institute, a nonprofit in Boston which facilitated projects from 1980 to 2012. So Public Trust is a free interactive traveling artwork by Brooklyn-based artist Paul Ramirez-Jones, and asked Bostonians to consider the meaning of a promise during the 2016 presidential election. This happened in August and September of last year. So they did 3 different sites in Greater Boston. Ramirez-Jones worked with 13 artist ambassadors to implement this project. So they listened to close to 1,000 Bostonians, collected their promises at custom promise tables, and together created a contract and artwork that participants could keep, and performed a ceremonial oath. Their promises took center stage, for about 5 to 15 minutes at a time on a 16-foot tall portable marquee. So the thing to understand here, the participant there with the raised fist, her promise was, I promise to live, love, learn, and empower unapologetically. The other quotes above and below were basically promises that were pulled from that day's media feed. Volkswagen promises an electric car, Clinton promises immigration reform. So basically citing individual commitments within larger social political commitments. So they did this in 3 neighborhoods, 7 days at each site. Let me just back. Boston Public Library, Kendall Center, the Kendall MIT trains of what's going on here, the Dudley Square branch of the Boston Public Library, Kendall Center, the Kendall MIT train station, and Copley Square, which is a park and located in front of the historic Trinity Church, and the iconic IMPA Tower in Boston. So basically what happens is the marquee's up, you see a lot of activity in that particular plaza. Participants could choose to participate if they wanted to, and if they made up their mind to participate, they were invited to sit down at this table with either the artist himself or with one of the artist collaborators. And at that point, the previously declared promise was still typeset on the table, and the artist ambassador basically read it to the participant and stated that they first needed to erase this promise in order to make room for yours. And this was an opportunity for them to say the previous promise out loud, to give that particular participant an example of what others have been doing, and to give them some time to basically compose their thoughts and their promises. So once the participant speaks their promise, the ambassador begins to compose the words on the table using typesetting. I love this project. Typesetting, printmaking, like all of these methods of communication and media. So once typeset, they basically did a graphite print of that typeset. So the participant got to walk away with their own promise embedded. here you can see a very good detailed example. And had a chance to basically stand in front of their promise displayed very, very publicly for a photo op. And again, those promises basically rotated every 5 to 15 minutes to involve as many folks as possible. I just want to close out to Michael Warner. He's the author of Publics and Counterpublics, a 2002 book. So the public is a social space created by the reflexive circulation of discourse, and this is a great example of that. Thank you.
Shift so we can see. Yeah, so one of my two categories, and I think it's kind of nice coming off of, I'll pull this a little closer, Kevin's presentation in the last couple of works, was really talking about active or an activism. So this is one of the themes that emerged from our awardees, an interesting creative works that engage the community actively to interact with the work, ranging from pieces that are physically constructive or collectively constructed by the public to pieces that serve as a catalyst for the public to be active in issues of concern such as urban blight, climate change, clean water, and global food crisis. And this one? Oh, I always like, of course, got to switch it, right? So Trumpet Flower in Houston, Texas. Trumpet Flower invited Houston citizens to paint wooden slats which were then woven together to create a temporary installation of a 70-foot-long lacy trumpet flower cascading down the side of a parking structure, which then provided a shady space as respite from the intense Houston heat. So this was a temporary installation. Sky Stage in Frederick, Missouri. Sky Stage transforms a derelict, burnt-out shell of a building in Frederick, Maryland, a downtown historic district, into the public works of art that also functions as a space for performance and interaction. A floating, drought-resistant garden using green roof watering technologies weaves through the open or missing doors and windows of the structure. The space then becomes an open-air theater, seats an audience of 140 people to present drama, music, children's stories, art classes, dance, literature, film, pop-up gallery shows, and yoga. This piece, Harm to Table by Matthew Mazzota in Boulder, Colorado. Harm to Table is a mobile dining experience with a community dining table that is brought into a space, unfolds and invites the public to gather, sit, and experience a menu which focuses on climate change, ingredients that are at risk of becoming extinct within the next 20 to 40 years due to climate change. The project is a result of working with local industry leaders to create this movable feast to foster conversations about climate change and endangered food resources. There's folks sitting down to eat. Seed the Change was a temporary work just actually below the Arch in St. Louis, Missouri, resulting from a day-long event in the riverfront by the Arch. Visitors were invited to fill in drawings made by the artist Jessica Witt, and the drawings were of native wildflowers. So participants were invited to come and use sunflowers, safflowers, and millet seeds to kind of create these massive mosaics. It's actually quite large, goes all along the riverfront. So throughout the course of the day, the drawings would change and shift as people were coming in and out. And it was kind of meant to kind of give people the ability to kind of be involved in this and also to interact with each other. At the end of the day, the seeds were eventually all swept up, and then I believe they were distributed to people for bird feeders and what like after that. So a local piece that we all loved was San Francisco Bay Guardians by Jennifer Wolford. It was a year-long installation of 6 murals made of environmentally materials and placed on the sidewalks next to storm drain grates around San Francisco's Mission Bay neighborhood. Each mural depicts different animals common to the San Francisco Bay standing guard in front of the storm drain, and it encourages passengers to be conscious of their litter and whatever sort of practice of waste going into those drains and harming its inhabitants. So we have a few different. I think one of the thoughts was that the animals look really cute and pleading up at the bystanders to like, don't throw trash in here. So it was kind of sweet. Phase Change is a temporary installation featuring 12,000 pounds of ice, which was harvested from Lake Calhoun in Minneapolis. The ice was then passively stored, which means I think just under sawdust and whatnot, from March to June, it was then installed into a sculptural structure. The ice was then subjected by infrared lights, which accelerated their melting in accordance to 3 global climate scenarios. One showing how the weather or temperatures have changed from pre-industrial times to contemporary industrial times, and then forecasting future temperatures as global warming increases. And I love the idea that in the summer you'd have these infrared hot lights, but you also have this cooling of the ice as well. It's quite striking visually. So water was obviously a really big component, and I think all of us here on the West Coast have struggled with the lack of water, and I think throughout the country, of course, we've all struggled with too much water with so much flooding in the past couple of years. So this piece is My, Your, Our Water, and initially she expressed concerns about the scarcity of water in the desert communities, but soon grew to include other locales and regions and global water issues. It consisted of a 45-foot floating illuminated sign that was placed in the water, and then it had additional components. So these are in the different locations. And then it also had a tricked-out tricycle, a daily blog, a website, and a Facebook to allow the public to engage and interact with issues of water in their community and globally. So this was Current Water LA, which was a sort of a group installation, a summer installation of works by various artists. It's their public art biennial, and it used contemporary art as a platform to encourage the exchange of ideas and inspire civic discourse about critical issues affecting Los Angeles and global cities. The artists were invited to come to visit different sites throughout Los Angeles, usually associated with water, and many of the projects included programming and performance. So this piece that we're looking at now is by Rafiq Anadol and Peggy Weil, called Under LA, Origin of the LA River, and it depicts, these are scrolling sort of lithographic images of soil samples from 1,400 feet below the surface of Los Angeles. So they're working with geologists to kind of inform the information, and then they were then projected on the banks of the LA River in these kind of monumental settings. Then this piece by Rick Crit, I'm also going to butcher the name, I'm sorry, Tiravanija, depicting this kind of like pagoda, sort of tranquil site in the Sepulveda Basin. It was a collaboration with the LA-based architect Kulapat Yantrasats, pardon me if I'm totally messing that up, an interdisciplinary design studio, WHY. The small open timber frame invites visitors to come and rest. You can respite from the heat and immerse themselves in nature. You can dangle your foot into the little stream that runs underneath it. It also is a place for the public to gather, contemplate the waterfall, and interact with the LA River. So this is actually off of Bell Creek, which is one of the feeding, and actually one of the few parts of the LA River that is still a natural, flows naturally as opposed to a concrete channel, as most of us know the LA River as. And then this piece was by Edgar Arsenault, the sculptural installation called Center of the Earth, which was inspired by two altars that he encountered in the Church of the Holy Sepulchre and the Old City of Jerusalem. The altars were built by two different Christian religions, both professed to be in the center of the earth. So he combined the two here. And then the last one is the mass collaboration between artist Joshua Callahan, I think that's, and David Kapoor, public sculpture resembling the mast and unfurled sails of a ship, transforming the South Los Angeles parklands into a maritime setting. So it's kind of like this buried ship. And then the materials, unlike, contrary to traditional shipbuilding materials, raw materials that would be used in normal park furniture and facilities. Okay. Oh my God, oh, here it is. It's sticking together. Very thin paper. I'm like, oh my God, a page of my notes are missing. All right, so, reflective. So we thought it would be kind of nice to close on some works that really focused on quiet and calming tones and encouraging the viewers to pause and take the time out of their busy day and place to reflect on place, historical, and future, and the presence. Nothing for keeps except that we must keep going. You'll spend your entire life searching. Okay, we all want to belong, so let's get along and make the most and hope. May this never end is the title of that piece. And it's a poem that basically wraps around this. It's temporary in Boston, Massachusetts. I think this fence was to keep pedestrians from going up on this ramp or leading them into the ramp in the proper way. But so the artist had just basically written this poem out and then cut them out of large plastic letters. And so it's being doubled by its shadow. It's a temporary piece with hopes that it would find a permanent home somewhere in Boston later on after this piece comes down. It's quite long. This piece, Solar Drones in Calgary, Alberta. These were pieces, it's a sound installation created from the soundboards of a number of pianos from the National Music Center, which were destroyed during the 2013 flood in Calgary. Each of the vessels employ electromagnetic system that is powered by solar roof panels, which cause the wires to vibrate, creating tunes and frequencies. The resulting is all these things coming together and creating variations and sounds, which are then kind of connect the viewer with what's happening in the clouds and sun outdoors. So it varies in terms of cloud cover and whatnot. But I thought it was really just a really beautiful sort of haunting to take these beautiful instruments that had been destroyed by natural elements and then kind of reinactivated, cut up and created into these little spaces, but then reactivated by nature once again, so it comes in full circle. Collection 900 Shapes is part of Alan McCullum's Shapes project, which seeks to create enough individual unique shapes to represent every person in the planet by the year 2050. To ensure that no two shapes will ever be alike, McCullum has designed a system of 300 individual parts that may be combined and produced over 31 billion shapes. The artist hopes that the shapes installation here at Elmhurst Branch Library may come to symbolize the community of Elmhurst and its goals and unity of love and diversity. And so each of these are, like I said, unique. El Alicio is an artwork from my hometown in Los Angeles. Of the exterior of a parking garage in downtown Los Angeles. The work commemorates an iconic sycamore which stood for over 400 years a few blocks from the building's site. Located near the bank of the Los Angeles River, the sycamore tree was at the center of the Yanga community, once the largest settlement of the native Tongva people in the LA basin. In the late 18th century, during the Spanish founding the nearby El Pueblo La Reina de Los Angeles, the sycamore was mistaken for an alder, and hence it's being the Castilian moniker for El Alicio. But so this is a large drawing that's been embedded in glass, and so during the day it has this really soft sort of a reminder. It's almost like a ghost of the sycamore tree now that everything's all built up around it. And then at light, I think you can see that it's illuminated. So I thought it was just a really beautiful. I love that it still really showed the artist's hand and had a real sensitive reminder of that area's history. And of course, everything's concrete and glass now. Midden Mound Wickiups. A wickiup refers to a primitive, temporary, domed structure made of bent branches, hides, and thatch, historically associated with the Native Americans of the Southwest. These works are made of modern materials, such as metal poles and mesh and geometric concrete benches, which provide shade and a place to rest and reflect on the historical precedents of our indigenous peoples and their light footprint on the land. So really, when you come to these sites, you're overlooking these vast vistas. It's really simple and beautiful and illuminated at night. So the last piece I'm presenting, I hope we're doing okay time-wise, is Breathing Lights. October and November 2016, Breathing Lights illuminated the windows of hundreds of vacant houses in Albany, Schenectady, Troy, New York. Warm lights filled, the windows with a diffused glow that mimicked the gentle breathing of a human. Concentrated in neighborhoods with high levels of vacancy, Breathing Lights transformed abandoned structures from pockets of shadows into places of warmth. Lead artists Adam Freeland and Barbara Nelson worked with dozens of regional partners to secure and install at 200 sites and produce 8 months of programming and events, including youth media programs, building reclamation clinics, community art presentations, and political discussions. So I love that this project came into this community and also served, and just in terms of the making of it, to kind of bring economic opportunities to sort of an economically suffering area. I lost my place. The unprecedented multi-city installation reinvigorated partners around the capital region's most visible symptom of decades of de-investment. At the end of the installation, the houses one by one fell dark. And the sense of sharing and loss came to stir the action. Named the project location vacant houses in Albany, Schenectady, and Troy. New York location description: Breathing Lights illuminated windows. 200, nearly 10% of the 2,000 vacant houses in the New York capital region. And I think I maybe have a couple more images. And I believe that's it for today. So, right. Thank you very much. Yeah. Is that on 10:30? Oh, I talked too fast.
Thank you guys so much. We are doing fantastic on time, so I'm actually going to keep you up here for 2 seconds and throw you on the spot with a few questions. So what exactly what were your thoughts when you were going through this process? What were some of the challenges that you ran into, and what were you really excited about as you were kind of going through, sort of thinking through what it is that you were seeing, how people were responding to their communities with these different public art pieces, the different artists that they were seeing? What was some of the sort of the exciting things that you sort of saw just overall through this process?
Can just kind of go from here down.
Yeah.
You know, I think the hardest part is not being able to choose everyone in some sort of way. I mean, there's so much great work out there, and of course we want to reward everyone that's really bringing art out there for all of us. But I think what was really interesting for us, and how we ended up putting this into these 6 separate categories, was it wasn't like we were going out and had established themes in our mind, but so we chose our choices, and then as we started looking at them, we thought it'd be more interesting to present them in these groups to kind of talk about sort of these sort of undercurrents, I think, that are kind of going across the nation in terms of how we have some very serious ideas about the politics we are living through, some serious ideas in terms of our environment, and then, of course, the need to have some humor on occasion and some just pure beauty as well. So I think it was kind of a nice way to present it to you. And maybe either of you have something to...
Yeah, I mean, also, if you consider the range of projects that were submitted this year, from literally a $10,000 temporary project to a multi-million-dollar permanent project. It wasn't necessarily a quota that we had, but we definitely wanted to highlight and showcase the breadth of not only budgetary concerns, but also a range of temporary and permanent works. As well, having, I think, a keen eye on geographic diversity, really paying attention to projects that happen outside of the major capitals on the coastal regions. I think the three of us as well had a very strong focus for looking towards innovation. Not only innovation in terms of form and location, but innovation in terms of public interactivity, public contribution, innovation in both aesthetics and beauty. Yeah, I think that informed a lot of the thinking for the three of us.
So I would say for me, the biggest challenge I had personally was kind of coming to terms with more traditional notions of public art versus this whole creative placemaking discussion that we've been having, and thinking about the way projects are funded and who's impacted by them. And yes, we call all of it public art. But for me personally, I was kind of interested in looking at what the traditional percent for art or dedicated funding for public art organizations were funding and accomplishing in the world, in that innovation vein, that is different than artists wanting to move into other fields, that there's 5 other departments that are already funding that. So landscape. It's kind of hard to articulate this on the spot, but really just feeling very traditional about the role of designating funds for public art and what that yields, and definitely trying to be supportive of ambitious, really big ambitious gestures to keep things in that sort of permanent public art realm, because we are moving so much effort and energy into the temporary.
Awesome. Thank you, guys. You did a fantastic job. I'm going to release you. Sherri has one more comment.
Just one more quick little thing. We know that there are some individuals who had requested us to respond to give them feedback about why their artwork wasn't selected. And we had a discussion about that, and we kind of decided that it was sort of impossible for us to respond, because when you're limiting all of them down from 325 to like 15% to like 49 of them, you just can't give a really valid criticism, other than if you didn't fill out your form right, you got rejected. But also because we're temporary jurors, and it was, many of us know in the public art world, you know, your jury, your committee, your selection committee is never ever going to be the same. So there's not the same amount of standards. So we just, you know, we're like Allison said, we wish we could acknowledge everyone, and we are by reviewing them and appreciating them, but we had to narrow it down.
Yeah, and it was probably mentioned at the top. Sorry, I was running late. At one of the BART stations in downtown Oakland, it was just a jam with janitorial cleaning up the confetti from yesterday's parade for the Warriors. But it was probably mentioned at the top of the session. But the 6 categories were not predetermined by us. There were no predetermined categories. We felt, after picking these 49 projects on the basis of the merits of them, we found a really nice kind of container system in which to group them together for this presentation. So just to make that absolutely clear, if your work didn't address storytelling, or didn't address the dazzling wow factor or activism, that was not part of the criteria. So just to be clear about that.
Don't get on our case, right?
Awesome. Thank you guys so much. We really appreciate it. All right, so we're getting near the end. We got a few pieces of programming that we just want to wrap up with you guys. So some of you may recall yesterday We invited an artist and an administrator to be sort of our ambassadors and sort of review and reflect what's going on over the last day and a half as us as attendees to the Public Art Pre-Conference. So I'm going to call them back up to hear what they've heard and what they sort of experienced and what they saw over the last day and a half based on their questions, based on their experiences. So is Chris around? Did I lose you guys? Dana? All right, well, we'll just end. You're here. You're here. Okay, Chris first. There you go.
We're hiding under the table.
That was a hard act to follow, to come up after seeing 49 incredible works of public art. I'm very inspired. So thanks for having me back. I have just a sort of few comments or more questions, I guess, after talking with you all and some colleagues, particularly on the Emerging Leaders Council, of which I'm a part. Some conversations have popped up for me. So as folks may have seen, my Atlanta colleagues are going to be mad for me raising this issue, but as folks may have seen yesterday, there's a big article in the New York Times about a lawsuit that a group of artists have filed against the city of Atlanta regarding the city's public art ordinance that has not been enforced for decades, and there's fear that it will be enforced, requiring public artworks on private property to go through a permitting process that is rather arduous. And it raises this issue, certainly First Amendment issues around private property and freedom of speech, but sort of pushes on this question that I asked yesterday morning of what are artists' responsibilities, what are administrators' responsibilities, creative placemaking practitioners' responsibilities to engage local communities, place-based stakeholders around public artworks, whether we want to call them public artworks or creative placemaking projects. And I know that many folks in the room work for city governments and local arts agencies, and I encourage you all to really think about how you can work with your elected officials and your governing bodies and your local jurisdictions to ensure that both artists and community stakeholders have a voice and have agency in determining what is in the public realm. Another issue that I have heard, not just in the last 24 hours, but I think is so important, is how to elevate and advance racial equity in the public art field, particularly in Percent for Art programs. We all know that artists with portfolios and track records and a long history of doing the work are more likely to be selected by juries, and that disproportionately affects artists of color who may not be able to self-fund their work. And so what is our responsibility to addressing that issue? And I think that is especially important for white administrators to think about, and that we need to step up and do more. I think that learned yesterday from my colleague on the Emerging Leaders Council, Liz, that Seattle is doing a capacity building and training program for artists of color, training them to work in the public realm. As we just heard, this sort of continued tension between public art versus creative placemaking, Michael Rode shared in the panel session yesterday a long question or 5-minute statement, and sort of kind of pushed on us to not take the easy out of saying an artist's role. An artist cannot engage the hundreds of thousands of riders of the New York transit system, and maybe the artist can't do that, but administrators can. Someone must, right? Someone must. And then one other idea that came up, I heard some folks talking about, was around pre-development budgets for community engagement and community partnerships in public artwork. So, Percent for Art program is funding the final product, but what responsibility are we putting on developers or institutions in their pre-development budget before they know they're making the money? To do the true community partnership work. And I think that we as a field need to think about moving from language like community engagement to community partnership, because community engagement starts and stops. Community partnership lasts beyond a project. It exists before a project and lasts beyond the project. And I think that if we can move into that space, we'll be more successful in addressing a lot of these issues that are coming up, not just in the public art field, but elsewhere in our sector. So thank you.
Wonderful, thank you. So Dana?
This is really hard. Chris, you did an awesome job, thank you. I feel like I'm still digesting, and I feel really honored, and I just want to thank you all for welcoming me and letting me be such an active listener. And I think that that was one of the pieces that Post Commodity talked a lot about yesterday, was the importance of listening and the role that public art can play in helping us be active listeners. So what's great about hearing what Chris was talking about is that I think a lot of my thoughts parallel those thoughts, of course with different language because we're different publics, which makes me go back to my original question about thinking about how can we keep the multiplicity and the pluralization of publics, to recognize that each of us in the room is responding to different sets of publics. A lot of people came up to me after I asked my questions yesterday and appreciated that we started thinking about multiplicity, whether you're from an urban space, a rural space, a space in between, a mountain space, an agricultural space, that we are responding to different publics, and kind of how can we utilize our publics and our thinking about public art to be in response and in reflection and kind of mirroring back and forth that dialogue, that public art can form a dialogical space instead of a monological space. So again, I think that in the past 24 hours, I've heard a lot about how can we be unapologetic in our publicness. And I'm still asking, why is public art a form? And the word public, that's something I feel like in most of our nation, there's so much repression around public and silencing of public, but still public art feels pretty safe, right? And it makes me think of this quote by Angela Davis, where she says, if they come for me in the morning, they will come for you in the night. So I just want to bring that up as we think about the silencing of many other publics. How can we as public art be unapologetic? And I think a lot of that has to do with the conversation that public art can create. So in the afternoon session, thinking about racial equity, talking about equity means that we have to talk more about justice. And we need equity because we need justice. Racial, economic, healthcare, gender, migration, environmental. And I think that to build justice, we have to build through systemic change. And one of the things that seems so challenging for everyone in this room that's interested in engaging in that conversation and prioritizes it in their life is that we know that we have to actually do that work in the institutions in which we work with, and feeling the constraints of what that is. And I think that that's the most powerful question, because when we talk about systemic injustices and lack of equity, it has to do with the institutions because it's systemic. And so that makes us have to think about where our funding's coming from. It makes us have to think about who our jurors are, who's in leadership positions, when do we step up, when do we step back. And Mildred Howard brought up this beautiful thing, and powerful and kind of thought-provoking piece that I've been thinking about, which is that artists and the agencies receive most of the direct social capital, social and economic capital in these public art projects. But then we know that we value bringing in community engagement, community partnerships even deeper. But what I'm interested in is there's not a direct, what is the direct capital that the community gets? We can understand, like we have this agreement that maybe there's an investment. That's the investment in the community that's being made, the investment in economic development for the neighborhood. But what if we actually asked ourselves, what is the direct social and economic capital, the direct social and economic capital that the communities or the land that we place our public art projects in could receive? And I think lastly, I just wanted to end with maybe a few minutes, maybe 60 seconds, of you turning to your partner, your neighbor at your table, and just kind of saying one thing that you're leaving with, that you feel committed with in terms of your practice in public art. We practiced this in the equity conversation that we had, and I think it is incredible to be asked, and I think this form of call and response is really important in this conference. But I think it would be great to hear the voices in this room. So if you can just turn to your partner and say, someone at the table, and say what you feel committed to after this pre-conference. Okay. If you can begin to think who you are talking to. Because if you want to just thank your partner for listening, and we might not be able to be quiet again, which is fine. I think that's totally fine, because this is what it is about. So, if you can hear me, clap once. If you can hear me, clap twice. All right, so what's great is that I feel like the rumble in the room, and I think a lot about the opening remarks yesterday, the rumble in the room, that loud voice that we just heard, to me is very much a signifier of what the power in this room is. So even though going back to your institutions, your municipalities, your cities, your agencies, and the advocacy work we have to do, you might feel isolated or in resistance, feeling the resistance of your larger institution, of the bureaucracy, of how many layers you have to go through. I feel like the rumble in the room is what we have to rely on, to know that there is this field that is existing. And another thing that Fabiana Rodriguez said yesterday that has been really sitting with me that I wanted to share with you all. She insists that cultural change precedes political change. And that's where I want to leave it.
Thank you so much to Dana and Chris for being our reflectors, our verbal note takers, and for responding to us in all of our craziness for the past day and a half. So thank you. Thank you for being part of this initiative, this little pilot project that we're working on. So here we are near the end. So I want to actually invite Susan Pontius. I don't know where you're hiding at the moment. I'm going to pull you back up on stage to thank you again for all the amazing work that you've done, you and your team. They have been a fabulous partner to work with this past year or 6 months or whatever we've been working. I don't remember anymore. We've been working on. So thank you, Susan. I'm going to give you some time to talk, to thank you, everybody else.
Oh, well, is it on? Is it on? Yes. Well, I guess I just, again, want to say thank you for coming to San Francisco. I can't tell you how much it means to me that you all came and saw our city, and I hope you really had a good time. And I don't I don't know what else to say. Inviting my colleague Michael Chavez up for next in Denver next year, and my words to Michael is good luck.
It's the official baton. Thank you, Susan. Hi everyone, I'm Michael Chavez. I'm the Director of Public Art for City of Denver, and it's our honor to host the convention next year. Where are my Colorado people? Where are you? Where? All right. See all those hands? We collectively invite you to join us next year in Denver. How many of you are planning on coming? Great. Give yourselves a round of applause. So I brought my blue friend with me. If you've been to Denver, you know that there's a 40-foot version of this, so I promise I'll show it to you if you come. It's by our Denver artist Lawrence Argent. Lawrence actually just completed the tallest sculpture in San Francisco, 92 feet tall, Venus. It's about a mile south of here at Trinity Place Plaza, so you should check that out before you leave town. And Colorado people excluded. Does anybody know the title of this sculpture? Somebody raise your hand. I see what you mean. I hope you have room in your suitcase because you get to take him home with you. That's all I got. We promise it's going to be great, and we'll see you next year. Mile High City.
Oh, thank you guys so much. And Sarah, can I invite you up here for 2 seconds to thank everyone as well? We just want to acknowledge the Public Art Network Council again for all their fantastic work. If you enjoy the sessions, it was all their hard blood, sweat, and tears that went into it. So thank you guys so much.
Thank you, Patricia. Thank you for all the work that you do linking the council and AFTA and putting up with all of our difficulties. So thank you, the PAN Council. You guys work really hard, and we have accomplished a lot and had a lot of fun together. I will once again ask everyone to consider chipping in and running for the council in the fall. We'd love to see you all, everybody, competing against each other, tooth and nail for a spot on the council. No, it's a lot of fun. Thank you, everybody, and thanks for being here.
Okay, we're done. 2017 is in the books. Thank you all so much. Have a lovely rest of the time in San Francisco. Have safe trip backs to wherever you're going. And thank you, thank you, thank you. I hope to see you all next year in Denver. Bye-bye.